be his father. And here's what nobody's talking about. Some of these records aren't just difficult, they're designed by fate and circumstance to be untouchable. But Charlie isn't backing down, and the way he's approaching this impossible mission is either the bravest thing in sports or the most tragic setup for heartbreak we've ever witnessed. Which records can Charlie actually reach? Which ones will haunt him forever? And is he already cracking under the weight of chasing ghosts? Let's be brutally honest about something first. Tiger Woods didn't just dominate golf, he shattered it into pieces and rebuilt it in his own image. 82 PGA Tour wins, tied with Sam Snead for the most in history. 15 major championships, second only to Jack Nicklaus's 18. But those numbers, as massive as they are, don't even tell the full story of how untouchable Tiger's legacy really is. Because buried inside those totals are records so absurd, so dominant, that mathematicians and statisticians have called them impossible to replicate in the modern era. And Charlie Woods, whether he asked for it or not, is being measured against every single one of them. Every time he steps onto a course, every time he hits a drive, every time he sinks a putt, the comparison machine starts running. The expectations aren't just high, they're suffocating, unreasonable, and potentially career-destroying before Charlie even gets started. Here's the record that makes golf historians shake their heads in disbelief. Tiger Woods held all 4 major championship trophies simultaneously. Not in a calendar year, which would have been the traditional Grand Slam, but across 2 seasons from 2000 to 2001. He won the US Open, the Open Championship, and the PGA Championship in 2000, then captured the Masters in April 2001. 4 consecutive majors. The Tiger Slam. Nobody had ever done it before. Nobody's come close since, and experts say nobody ever will again. Why is this record considered absolutely unbreakable? Because modern golf is too deep, too competitive, and too unpredictable. In Tiger's era, he was so dominant that he could realistically enter every major as the favorite. Today, there are 15 to 20 players who could legitimately win any given major championship. The margin between 1st and 15th has shrunk dramatically. Course setups have become more randomized and less favorable to dominant ball strikers. And the mental pressure of trying to hold 4 major trophies at once would be absolutely crushing in the social media era, where every shot is analyzed and every mistake is memed into oblivion. For Charlie Woods to break this record, he wouldn't just need to be great. He'd need to be better than his father at his absolute peak, which might be the single most unrealistic expectation ever placed on a teenager in sports history. But that's not even the most terrifying record on the list. The one that truly haunts anyone who understands golf statistics is Tiger's win percentage. Between 1999 and 2009, Tiger won nearly 30% of the tournaments he entered. Think about that for a second. Almost 1 out of every 3 tournaments resulted in a Tiger Woods victory. In a sport where the best players in the world go years without winning, Tiger was winning 3 times per season for an entire decade. Charlie Woods isn't just competing against other talented juniors or college players. He's being compared to a statistical anomaly that defied every probability model in professional sports. To match that win rate, Charlie would need to win 30 PGA Tour events by the time he's 30 years old while playing a full schedule. That's not just unlikely, it's borderline impossible given how competitive modern golf has become. And here's where it gets even more brutal for Charlie. Tiger accomplished most of his dominance before equipment technology leveled the playing field. Modern drivers, balls, and training methods have made everyone longer and more consistent. The gap between the best player and the 20th best player has shrunk dramatically. Tiger had physical and technical advantages that simply don't exist anymore in the same way. Charlie would have to be so much better than everyone else just to replicate what his father did in an easier competitive environment. Then there's the record that golf fans debate endlessly. Tiger's streak of 142 consecutive cuts made on the PGA Tour from 1998 to 2005. 142 straight tournaments where Tiger not only showed up, but played well enough to make the weekend. That's 7 years of never missing a cut, never having an off week bad enough to go, home early, never struggling so badly that he couldn't compete. The mental toughness required to maintain that streak is almost incomprehensible. Bad weather, difficult course setups, injuries, personal issues, none of it mattered. Tiger showed up and performed at a minimum viable level every single time for 7 straight years. In modern golf, where players manage their schedules carefully and skip events to peak for majors, the idea of even attempting this kind of consistency seems absurd. Charlie Woods is already facing pressure that would break most teenagers. Imagine adding the weight of a cut streak to that burden. One bad week, one missed cut, and the streak is over. The comparison to his father's record would be immediate and brutal. Tiger made 142 straight cuts. Charlie missed one in his 3rd event. That's the kind of narrative that could follow him forever. But here's the record that might be the most psychologically damaging of all. Tiger Woods spent 683 weeks as the world's #1 ranked player. That's more than 13 years cumulatively at the absolute peak of the sport. He was #1 for so long that it became almost boring, expected the natural order of golf. For Charlie to break that record, he'd need to reach #1 quickly and then hold that position for over a decade while fighting off challenges from Scottie Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, and an entire generation of elite international players. The mental strain of staying at #1 for that long, of having a target on your back for 13 years, of never being able to relax or coast, it's something that Charlie can't even comprehend yet. But here's what makes Charlie's situation even more complicated and tragic. He can't just be good. He can't even just be great. To avoid being labeled a disappointment, Charlie Woods needs to be historically dominant in a way that almost no athlete in any sport has ever achieved. Because anything less than matching his father's records will be framed as failure, regardless of how objectively successful his career might be. Think about that pressure for a second. Most professional golfers would consider a career with 5 PGA Tour wins to be successful and fulfilling. But if Charlie Woods retires with 5 wins, he'll be remembered as the son who couldn't live up to his father's legacy, the player who disappointed, the talent who never reached his potential. That's not fair, but it's the reality of carrying the Woods name. And the saddest part is that Charlie didn't choose any of this. He was born into impossible. Charlie Woods just did something at a junior tournament that has the entire golf world questioning everything they thought they knew about pressure, expectations, and what it means to carry one of the most famous names in sports history. This wasn't about winning or losing. This wasn't about perfect scores or highlight reel shots. This was about a decision Charlie made that revealed more about who he is as a person and player than any trophy ever could. What actually happened that has veterans and analysts completely rethinking their assumptions? Why are people who've known Tiger for decades saying they never saw this coming? And how did one moment expose the impossible weight Charlie's been carrying since before he could even spell his own name? Let's be honest about the reality Charlie Woods faces every single time he steps onto a golf course. He's not just another talented junior player trying to earn college scholarships and build a competitive resume. He's Tiger Woods' son, which means every swing gets compared to the greatest golfer of his generation. Every tournament result gets analyzed through the lens of whether he's living up to his father's legacy. Every shot is watched by people who aren't just rooting for him to succeed, but are actively waiting to see if he'll crack under pressure that no teenager should have to carry. The junior golf circuit is brutal enough on its own without that additional weight. These are tournaments where hundreds of talented kids are fighting for rankings, recognition, and pathways to elite college programs and professional careers. The competition is fierce, the pressure is constant, and the margin between success and failure is razor thin. Most junior players deal with that pressure alone or with supportive parents who understand the game but aren't global icons whose every achievement set impossible standards. Charlie doesn't have that luxury. He has a last name that opens every door and simultaneously makes every door harder to walk through. He has a father whose career accomplishments are so extraordinary that even matching a fraction of them would be considered disappointing by people who don't understand how rare greatness actually is. And he has a spotlight that's been on him since before he was old enough to understand what it meant. What happened at this junior invitational exposed all of that in ways that made people uncomfortable. Charlie was competing in a tournament where he was expected to contend, where his name alone drew media attention and spectators who wouldn't normally watch junior golf. The pressure was building from the moment he arrived, not because of how he was playing, but because of who everyone expected him to be. If you want to understand what happened next, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story reveals something profound about identity and choice. And then Charlie made a decision that nobody saw coming. Instead of grinding through the pressure, instead of forcing himself to meet everyone else's expectations, Charlie chose to step back. Not because he couldn't compete, Not because his game wasn't ready, but because he recognized that the environment had become more about managing everyone else's expectations than about playing golf in a way that felt authentic to him. That choice shocked people because it contradicted the narrative everyone had built around Charlie Woods. The assumption has always been that Charlie would follow his father's path, that he'd embrace the pressure and thrive under it the way Tiger did, that carrying the Woods name meant accepting the burden without complaint and proving himself worthy through relentless competition. But what Charlie did was something arguably harder and more mature than just winning the tournament. He made a choice that prioritized his own mental health and authentic relationship with golf over meeting external expectations. He recognized that sometimes the bravest thing an athlete can do isn't pushing through regardless of cost, but acknowledging when the circumstances aren't serving their growth and choosing a different path. The immediate reaction was mixed and revealed a lot about how people view young athletes, especially those connected to legendary parents. Some praised Charlie for maturity beyond his years, for understanding that his worth isn't determined by junior tournament results, and that protecting his love for the game matters more than satisfying people he'll never meet. Others criticized the decision as soft or entitled, suggesting that champions push through discomfort and that stepping back represented a lack of competitive fire. But both reactions miss what's actually significant about this moment. Charlie Woods is a teenager trying to figure out who he is as a golfer and as a person, and he's doing it under scrutiny that would break most adults. The decision to step back wasn't about avoiding competition. It was about refusing to let other people's expectations dictate how he experiences golf and what success means to him. People who've worked with junior golfers and understand the psychological demands of elite youth sports saw something different in Charlie's choice. They saw a kid who's developing self-awareness and agency in an environment designed to strip both away. Junior golf at the highest levels can become about pleasing coaches, satisfying parents, impressing scouts, and meeting rankings targets until the actual joy of playing gets buried under all those external pressures. Charlie recognizing that dynamic and making a conscious choice to step away from it, even temporarily, suggests he's developing tools that will serve him far better long-term than any junior tournament victory ever could. Because the reality nobody wants to acknowledge is that most junior golf phenoms never make it professionally, not because they lack talent, but because they burn out mentally from years of pressure that started too young and never stopped. What makes Charlie's situation unique is that he doesn't need golf for financial security or opportunity. Tiger's success has ensured Charlie will have choices and options regardless of whether he ever plays professional golf. That freedom should theoretically make it easier for Charlie to play for the right reasons, but it also removes some of the external motivators that drive other junior players. When you're not chasing scholarships or trying to escape difficult circumstances through sports, the only reason to endure the pressure is because you genuinely love the competition. And that's what Charlie seems to be figuring out. Does he love golf enough to deal with everything that comes with being Tiger Woods' son? Does competitive golf bring him joy? Or has it become primarily about managing other people's expectations and defending a legacy he didn't create? Those are profound questions that most teenagers never have to answer, but Charlie's been living them since he first picked up a club. The veteran players and analysts who said they never saw this coming are revealing their own assumptions about what Charlie should want and how he should handle pressure. They assumed he'd be built